Hi friends, so I wanted to talk about the non-profit industrial complex and how they're hooked into the Democratic Party, and which ends up basically making these social justice movements kind of a bit null and void. They're kind of a bit ineffective, to say the least. In fact, more than ineffective, they're really actually working for the capitalist class in the end. I want to share something by Danny Hapfong, and I've mentioned Danny Hapfong. He writes for the Black Agenda Report, and he's also written a book, American Exceptionalism, American Innocence, and check that out. It's a really good publication. So anyway, I wanted to read something by, I think sharing it actually, I think you'll find it interesting and important to know, because it talks about the non-profit industrial complex. And I have to say I've been aware of this, but I hadn't really sort of thought, I didn't really know this about Black Lives Matter, and I think it's important to know. So it's titled Alicia Garza, G-A-R-Z-A, attacks Jill Stein at behest of the Working Families Party and the non-profit industrial complex, by Danny Hapfong, and you can find that at the Black Agenda Report on the 2nd of October 2019. Servile to corporate power, Garza repeated the racist, quote, Bernie bro, end quote, trope to vilify the most multiracial base of the Democratic Party. The Black Uprising, otherwise known as Black Lives Matter, struck fear in the heart of America's racist state. The fear materialized into a two-pronged war to neutralize the movement's growth and impact. Black rebellions in Ferguson and other cities across the country were first met with militarized police occupation and an ongoing FBI operation to subvert, quote, black identity extremism, end quote. State expression was reinforced by an ideological war waged from the boardrooms of the corporate media. Black rage was criminalized while respectability politics was rewarded with non-profit careers. The movement was swept off the streets and into the halls of the non-profit industrial complex. The non-profit industrial complex is a $1 trillion operation. Oligarchs not only receive a tax deduction for their investment, but many of the richest individuals sit on the board of foundations and non-profits to steer their, quote, mission-driven, end quote, organizations. Non-profit boardrooms are not accountable to the people, but to the funders. In the social justice sector of the non-profit industrial complex, donors mainly reside in the Democratic Party, quote, liberal, end quote, camp. Robert Allen's seminal text, Black Awakening in Capitalist America, traces the genesis of non-profit surveillance of black politics to the Ford Foundation's support of mainstream civil rights organizations such as Congress of Racial Equality, that's CORE. The Ford Foundation, a conduit for the Democratic Party, once has again immersed itself in black politics by giving over $100 million in donations to Movement for Black Lives organizations starting in 2015. Reliance upon the Ford Foundation and other corporate philanthropists ensures that the movement is, in the final analysis, controlled by the very white capitalist system responsible for black misery. Subservience to the non-profit industrial complex requires that one also pledge loyalty to the Democratic Party. That explains why Alicia Garza, co-founder of the Black Lives Matter Network organization, was so quick to condemn former Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein's critique of the Working Families Party. Stein's comment that the Working Families Party endorsement of Elizabeth Warren mirrors the DNC's hit job of Sanders in 2016 struck a visceral chord with Garza. Garza proceeded to devalue Stein's opinion with her followers and handpick a few trolls on Twitter to demonstrate just how anti-black Sanders' base can be. Attacking Bernie Sanders and the Green Party is likely to please many corporate philanthropists in the Democratic Party camp. Tax documents from Demos, a Democratic Party think tank, once headed by Elizabeth Warren's daughter, Amelia Warren Tiagi, show that the organization made 3 different donations of $15,000 to the Workers' Family Party in 2017-2018. It is no wonder that the Workers' Family Party leadership opted for Warren over Sanders. Garza claimed she was defending the Workers' Family Party's director Maurice Mitchell from racist attacks, and penned an open letter that avoided the substance of Jill Stein's critique of the Workers' Family Party altogether. Garza opted to publicly shame Stein and the Green Party because there was little else to defend about the Workers' Family Party's decision to endorse Warren. Warren stands markedly to the right of Bernie Sanders on every issue of concern to black Americans, workers and poor people. The deplorable white liberal racism towards Indigenous people is also a liability in a general election against the arch-racist loose cannon Donald Trump. Garza and the Workers' Family Party's endorsement of Warren demonstrate clearly that non-profit leaders are primarily interested in advancing their careers within the non-profit industrial complex. The non-profit industrial complex builds a network of careerists by tackling social problems through a single-issue lens. Single-issue campaigns channel grassroots energy away from the principles of class struggle and self-determination. And if I can just stop for a moment, this is an interesting point because this actually is something that vegans complain about in relation to veganism. When you have people promoting all these single-issue campaigns about how to make this particular exploitation prettier and that particular exploitation prettier, and bans and boycotts that never really are effective, and they're all single-issue campaigns. But instead of saying to the public, just go vegan, and then you end your participation in the exploitation and also in the endorsement of the property status of animals. If you're a vegan, then you're not propping up the property status of animals that is in law at the moment, which is an unfair and immoral law. But the only way to actually address that is to become vegan. So these single-issue campaigns are actually, not only are they a distraction, but they're a fundraiser for animal groups, even those that call themselves animal rights groups. If you have dozens and dozens, you have an endless amount of single-issue campaigns, then you're always bringing in money, but you're never asking people what they need to do, which is just to go vegan. You cannot make animal exploitation pretty. You cannot make it humane. It's just not possible. And even if it was, it would still be wrong. I just find that point about single-issue campaigns, which are basically a distraction from the problem, which is class struggle and self-determination, and everybody should be focusing on that instead of these single-issue campaigns. Anyway, so I'll just continue. Class struggle and self-determination only materialize when oppressed people and workers unite against their common enemy and demand that power and wealth be redistributed back to the producers of society. That enemy, the capitalist class, is committed to retaining its dominance at all costs and has deployed non-profits to curtail the power of the people at the public's expense. Non-profits function as both an economic engine for the rich and a tool of surveillance of the poor. This aligns well with the Democratic Party's own function as the graveyard of social movements, so it should come as no surprise that the DNC's influence over social justice-oriented philanthropy is palpable. DNC's influence over Black Lives Matter affiliated nonprofits is clear in the Garza-led Black Census Project. According to executive editor of Black Agenda Report, Glenn Ford, the project, quote, performed a kind of lobotomy on the black polity in the United States, excising the public policy discussion Black Americans' view on the nation's endless military and economic wars against people of color around the world, end quote. Instead of asking Black Americans about their position on endless war, the Black Census Project focused on how Democratic Party candidates can perfect their engagement with the politically active black voters and ensure black loyalty to the Democratic Party. Garza's project collected information that the Democratic Party will need when formulating its lies and false promises for the 2020 election cycle. The Democratic Party cultivates black leaders who will speak to the needs of the party's donors over the needs of humanity. Nonprofits create optimal conditions for the development of leaders, black and otherwise, who are servile to corporate power. Most nonprofits look and act like corporate enterprises. A board of directors, mainly white oligarchs, chooses an executive director to generate revenue in the same manner that a CEO of a major corporation is chosen to run the affairs of a multinational giant. The most influential players in the nonprofit, the donors, operate behind the scenes to shape the agenda of the agency, just as shareholders wield their influence over corporate enterprises. Thus, nonprofit and for-profit corporations are two of the most undemocratic institutions to evolve from the process of capitalist exploitation. These institutions are not accountable to anyone but the capitalist class. Unlike corporations, however, non-profits are heavily branded as institutions that stand for and work towards social justice. Yet most non-profits do not practice social justice within their organizations, let alone outside of them. Neither the Working Families Party nor the Black Lives Matter Network organization share their financial information with the public. Doing so would burst asunder their social justice veneer, leaving only the naked hypocrisy of the non-profit industrial complex for the people to wrestle with. The non-profit industrial complex is the institutional mechanism from which the Democratic Party turns social movements into business opportunities. Non-profits are so prominent in the political and economic life of the United States that they comprise a vital sector of the capitalist economy. Workers and oppressed people have come to know non-profits as hospitals, workers' centers, and social service agencies. Thus, the non-profit industrial complex is not merely an agent of co-optation. Non-profits have fueled their growth by exploiting the impoverished conditions of workers, especially black workers. Excluding the misleaders and careerists, millions of workers and well-meaning activists are employed by the non-profit industrial complex. This means that opposition to the material and ideological stranglehold of the non-profit industrial complex over the political development of the masses must strategize how to win people over to a form of political organizing that is independent of donations from corporate or state actors. To begin this process, the most visible and prominent leaders of the non-profit industrial complex should be held accountable for their attacks on progressives and leftists who challenge the Democratic Party. Jill Stein is not the enemy of the people. The Green Party platform is far more progressive and left politically than even the most leftist elements of the Democratic Party's agenda. Elizabeth Warren's milquetoast candidacy is being used by the Democratic Party to thwart the immensely popular anti-austerity agenda of Bernie Sanders. Garza repeated the racist, quote, Bernie bro, end quote, trope to vilify the most multiracial base of the Democratic Party. Garza and her partners in the non-profit industrial complex are silent over Warren's acceptance of being labeled the first female of color professor at Harvard Law. They also remain silent over the DNC's undeniable loyalty to candidates such as Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, two of the foremost architects of the mass incarceration regime. The message is clear. If you are seeking upward mobility in the non-profit industrial complex, then protecting the Democratic Party and attacking the real left is just part of the job description in the non-profit industrial complex. So I think that's a really good essay and something to be mindful of about politics, about the Democratic Party and these non-profits. Danny Hapfong is an activist and journalist in the New York City area. He and Robert Servant are co-authors of the book entitled, and I mentioned it before, American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, a people's history of fake news from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror. That's through Skyhorse Publishing. And so, check out that book. It's a really excellent book. Anyway, that's really all I wanted to share. I just thought it was very interesting when Elizabeth Warren's daughter had made that donation to the Workers' Family Party, and then the Workers' Family Party endorsed her. Just more of the pay-to-play politics, the corruption, etc. in the United States. And just to add that recently Tulsi Gabbard has been backpedaling on Medicare for All, so there was an interview with her and she was starting to do this Medicare choice thing, talking about that, which is kind of very unfortunate. Just one more, as far as I'm concerned, one more strike against her. She's pro-Israel. She's okay with the drone war. She keeps talking about the values of American soldiers in relation to, being a president of the United States. I don't know what that means. She goes on and on about being a soldier. The pro-Israel thing, basically, and being against the BDS campaign was just a deal breaker anyway. But so and she's backpedaling on Medicare for All. So I'm thinking, and then she also said that political correctness is an attack on freedom of speech. That's her dog whistle to the right. And basically, I think she's starting to grift from the right. She's starting to grift with these sort of, it's a kind of a movement to the right in a way. And yeah, so that's not progressive. Not that, you know, I didn't think she was progressive because I knew that she was going to be pro-Israel because of how she was flying under the radar with that. So anyway, so, you know, that's, as far, people should just write her off. If she's backpedaling on Medicare for all already, you know, I mean, what's left really? So anyhow, that's all I really wanted to say. So please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Please click the notifications bell, otherwise you won't receive notifications when I drop a video. And if you haven't heard from me in a couple of weeks, it's because YouTube has been dumping some of my subscribers when I do videos about Palestine. The last time I did that, there was about 20 people suddenly unsubscribed, and I don't think that was because of their objection suddenly to that issue, because I mention it often. But I think they were unsubscribed by YouTube, which YouTube does do that to people who are anti-imperialist, anti-war, and speak about Palestinian rights. That's not uncommon. So anyway, check in if you haven't heard from me in a couple of weeks. I haven't been doing many videos recently because I'm very busy with the property here, and it's spring and there's fruit trees and all sorts of things and that have to be done. So I'm sorry that I'm a little quiet, but I will try and do some more videos coming up soon. There probably will for the next 3 months at the most be 2 a week maybe, or 1 a week. So anyway, I hope that you tune in. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.